One man's junk is another's treasure, they say, but in Scrap Riders, a unique fusion of beat-em-up and point-and-click adventure, you won't be pawning off used merchandise. Instead, you'll play as Rast, a member of well-known biker gang, the Scrap Riders. Rast awakens in his tighty whities after a night of debauchery and attempts to clear his mind with what else? Video games, of course. The ultimate cure for a hangover, am I right? These opening moments not only serve to set the tone for Scrap Riders' humor, but also act as a tutorial where you'll learn the basic point-and-click mechanics of the game and, through the lens of a game within a game, I know that's confusing, how the brawling plays. As always, humor is subjective, and while the writing could have used another pass through an editor, overall Scrap Riders did get the occasional chuckle out of me. If crude humor and vulgarity aren't your cup of tea, you won't find much to sip on here, but for me, I tend to enjoy immature antics, just ask anyone that knows me, and so the plot held my interest enough. This certainly isn't the Odyssey in terms of literary brilliance, but whether it was my robot partner alluding to performing sexual acts on other machines, or Rast himself unsuccessfully flirting with a young lady in a bar, there were a decent amount of laughs throughout this adventure that made some of the game's grammatical errors a bit more forgivable. As for the gameplay, you might wonder how the heck a point-and-click adventure fuses with an arcade-style beat-em-up. Well, surprisingly, the concept works moderately well. I would say the game is split about 60-40, with the point-and-click elements taking up the larger majority of your time, and the beat-em-up segments supplying action and energy at appropriate times through the narrative. It's a decent balance, and both modes of play keep things really basic. As a point-and-click, fans of the genre will feel right at home. You have full control over Rast, and of course you can interact with a variety of different objects on the screen, as well as talk to certain characters. Really nothing new here if you've played a point-and-click before, with the puzzles skewing a bit on the easy side compared to many games within this genre. Now, some of you may look at that as a positive, while others could potentially find the game a bit too easy. Rarely do puzzles get much more complicated than combining or finding certain items or exhausting dialogue options. Personally, I didn't mind the lighter challenge myself, and players will find a bit more resistance in the brawling sections. As a brawler, Scrap Riders is fairly competent as well. I was almost reminded of games like Double Dragon, but with some light modern touches. You can grab enemies, punch, give them a big boot, and even shoot them with bullets that are dropped from certain enemies should you have one in your inventory. You'll also have a rage meter that fills up as you dish out damage, with which you can trigger an airborne attack that will launch enemies and allow for some juggling. Or you can also do an elbow attack that transitions into a bullet shot, which is great for when you find yourself crowded in by enemies. I think one thing that could have potentially been interesting with Scrap Riders would have been the addition of co-op. I mean, I know it's a point and click and these games aren't known for being co-op experiences, but I do feel like they could have found a way for it to work, especially when you have those brawler elements mixed in. So I'd love to see them mess around with that concept if they ever do create a sequel. Again, whether Scrap Riders is playing the role of an adventure game or arcade brawler, it never excels as either, but it does get the job done, and I like how the game mixed the genres together. On paper, it didn't sound like a recipe for success, but credit the developer for making it work. Getting around this world is a breeze as well, thanks to a well-implemented travel system that has you cruising between areas on your bike. Also, the visuals in Scrap Riders, they're pretty charming. Nice pixel art here, though I did find the game to look maybe a bit too pixely when played on my monitor. I think I ended up preferring the way this game looked on my Steam Deck. This game was not deck verified at the time of this review, but it seemed to be fine and it looked wonderful on that screen. Still, wherever you play, you'll find some nice looking set pieces that are well detailed, like dusty bar rooms or even dance clubs, and characters that look unique and do have some fun personalities that bring those visuals to life. Pixel art is hardly original in the indie scene, but I always have great appreciation for it, and that's no different here. I also really enjoyed the soundtrack and overall sound design. These characters don't have voices, which is a bit of a bummer, but the soundtrack is a nice mix of industrial synth at both low and high energy levels, depending on the scene. Punches and other sound effects have a lovely 16-bit quality to them that makes Scrap Riders an attractive package in terms of both visuals and audio. Alright, here's the sad, unfortunate downside segment of this review. Yeah, Scrap Riders broke on me, and to the point where I was unable to finish the game after over 3 hours of gameplay. I would go through a mildly frustrating brawler scene only for the game to either freeze Rast in place, or for my character to be stuck with nowhere to go. This was a major bummer, and I really hope this issue gets fixed sooner rather than later, because outside of that, I hadn't hit any issues with performance. It's just a shame that when I did, it was game over for me. I tried and tried again, I did that seen multiple times, my hands were killing me by the end of all of this, and as I do with every game, I did my best to get through it, but it was just not meant to be. I kept freezing at the same location every single time. Still, should this major issue be fixed, which I'm sure it will be, Scrap Riders offers a fun script with solid point-and-click and brawling mechanics. Sure, the writing could have used some tweaking, and it does skew a bit on the easier side, but it's a game that, despite ultimately making me cry in the end due to breaking, it did give me some laughs, and I can cautiously recommend it if you happen to be a fan of both of these genres.